Welcome to my multivariate presentation entitled Canadian Youth and Political Participation. The research question for this work asks, what factors have strong influence on political participation on Canadians aged 18 to 35 years old? Interest in this generation has increased in recent years, as seen particularly by the UN High-Level Meeting on Youth that took place in July 2011. Observations on the situation of youth in different spheres, social, economics, politics, all of these provide indicators of the health of a society or areas that need reevaluation. The data for this research comes from Election Canada's National Youth Survey from 2011. This presentation builds on previous research on political participation among young adults. Alexina and Giuliano provide the basis for how I constructed the dependent variable. They also studied the positive role of first having an interest in politics. McFarland and Thomas wrote about the positive role that volunteerism has on political participation. Flanagan and Levine suggest that increasing formal education leads to more participation. Finally, income will also be considered, based on Salt's argument that a higher income is related to more participation. Political participation was measured by creating an index. The question wording of the indicators used will appear on the next slide, but a summary appears here. Canadian youth were asked 6 yes or no questions on whether they engaged in particular political activities. A high score on the index was given to respondents that performed the most political activity, while a low score was given to those that performed the least or no activities. Here you can see the exact wording of the indicators used. A reliability analysis for these indicators produces an alpha score of 0.6411. The score is higher than the minimum threshold value of 0.60. We may therefore conclude that these questions are related enough to combine into an index. The table here also shows alpha scores if individual indicators were deleted. These scores are all less than the overall alpha score, and all 6 indicators appear in the final index. In the first model, 3 independent variables were studied. For each variable, a hypothesis was made that higher levels in the independent variable should lead to more political participation. The first independent variable measured was volunteerism. Volunteering may expose and inform respondents to issues related to the causes they are working on. Investing more time in volunteering may also make individuals more passionate about issues, possibly motivating them to take political actions. The second independent variable looks at different levels of interest in Canadian politics. A young person's initial interest in politics may be assumed as a first step before getting involved. Higher interest may also mean knowing more about politics, the issues, and also who to connect with and what actions to take to make desired changes. A third variable looks at how much education respondents have completed. More time spent in school and engaging in facilitated discussion may help young people better formulate their own political opinions. Schools also serve as a site for students to learn about politics outside the classroom, in clubs and informal discussions. The first model shows the results from conducting a regression analysis to predict political participation using these 3 independent variables. Let's look at volunteerism first. When controlling for the other variables, a 1-category increase in volunteerism produces a substantial increase in political participation. Units on the political participation scale increased by 0.02, which means that volunteerism's B value, 0.12, shows an increase of just over half a unit on the participation index. A 1-unit increase in interest produces a slightly smaller increase at 0.08, less than half a unit on the index. However, volunteerism was a nominal yes or no variable, and interest had a 4-point scale. The difference in distance between units within these variables is reflected by the slightly larger standard error for volunteerism. The standardized beta scores also show that interest has the most influence in this model, and volunteerism the second most. Education has the lowest B value. Controlled for the other variables, a 1-category increase in education produces only a very minimal increase. Education has a wider scale of 6 options, which makes increasing along education a longer process and may help provide a context for understanding education's more minimal and slower effect on influencing political participation. Yet I didn't feel that my questions on political participation were fully answered at this point. I had to ask, was income playing an unnoticed role? I hypothesized on how controlling for income would affect the other variables. For volunteering and interest, I expected that controlling for income would produce replication. How people choose to spend their time and what they choose to be interested in may be linked to many life situations, not merely one's money. I also hypothesized that by directly showing income influence, the role of education would get stronger, and so suppression. When income is not exposed, it may quietly be shaping the influence of education because how far one may progress in their schooling may be related to their economic background. The income variable was recoded into 3 categories, show income levels of low, medium, and high. The lowest bracket, less than $40,000, was used as the reference category. Here you can see the 2 models side by side. Volunteerism and interest show replication with almost identical B scores and contained high levels of significance. We can also see that controlling for income increased the significance of education on political participation. Also recall the general rule of thirds. The increase in the B value seems to have increased slightly more than a third, and may initially suggest that the results show suppression. However, this may not be the final word. If we look at two standard deviations from education in the first model, we have a range from 0.03 to 0.015. This means that the 0.012 finding may not be enough of a change to really be discussing suppression. We may more confidently say that the model shows replication. Income variables also surprise. Their negative B values show that as income increases, the level of political participation decreases in comparison to those of the lowest income bracket. This finding may be contextualized. The Political Participation Index measured local and grassroots activities that may be more characteristic of those from lower income brackets. To summarize the findings, in both models, the numbers show that political interest had the strongest influence on participation levels, and that volunteering had the second strongest influence. Between the models, replication was found for the influence of both these modules, as expected. Education's influence was weaker than expected. While we saw an increase in its significance when controlling for income, the numbers still seem to show replication, an unexpected finding from our hypothesis. Finally, coming from a more wealthy income bracket seems to show a corresponding decrease in the taste of political activity measured here. To conclude, these findings give a picture of what influences political participation among Canada's youth, and give us ideas as to how we can work to encourage them to engage more. If Canadians want a democracy where its citizens are as fully engaged as possible, we may want to consider how to first get young people interested in politics. Further study may also extend the survey to include a broader set of political activities. The grassroots and local level politics tell only part, but an important part, of the story. Thinking about other ways Canadians are getting involved may tell us more about political participation. Thank you for your time.